She ran from a wedding in wet lace and borrowed boots, then found 3 Apache children stranded above a drowning road. Stormlight made noon look like evening. The desert had held its breath for months, and now the sky paid everything at once, tipping gray pails until gullies gnashed and dry creeks remembered their names. Etta Vale, 23, and married for less than an hour to a man who treated vows like rope, left the clapboard church while the hymn was still climbing and kept walking. Lace stuck to her knees, the veil torn once on a nail, hung like a surrender flag she refused to wave. Gravel cut her toes through thin leather, but the boots were the only pair the housekeeper would lend. Etta did not go to town. She cut for the flats, the way wind goes when it does not want to be found. Where the wagon road dropped into the wash, water ran brown and fast, shoulders frothing. 3 small figures perched on a narrow ledge above the flood. 2 boys and a girl, braids soaked, knees hugging chests, a bundle clutched tight against the girl's ribs. No cry, no waving. They watched the rise like people who already knew what floods decide. Etta stepped to the edge and learned how deep the wash had grown by the sound it threw back. She looked for a branch long enough to offend the current and found none. The ledge was 10 feet out and 3 feet up. A bad bargain. The children's eyes did not leave her hands. She slipped off the white shoes and tied their laces together, slinging them across her neck like a second, smaller refusal. She waited until the water shoved, then turned sideways and felt for stones, the way a blind hand feels for door jambs in the dark. The first boy was light. She reached, he reached, and the river decided to be polite one moment longer. She tucked him to her hip and crabbed back, heel to stone, breath shallow to make room for balance. The second boy hesitated not at her, but at the bundle. The girl pressed it into his arms. Etta took him and the bundle together. The weight changed her stance, but the water eased for the time it takes to swallow and not choke. The girl remained. She was older by a year and by something else. She did not look at Etta. She looked past her, measuring paths through air as if some map hung between cottonwoods that only she could read. The water slapped higher. Etta lifted her arm once, flat palm, the shape that means I can. The girl studied the hand, then the boots tied at Etta's throat, then the bundle already on the bank, and nodded the smallest nod a person can make and still mean it. Etta leaned until her ribs clicked, and the girl leaned until her toes left the ledge, and the current threw a shoulder that could have been an end and decided not to be. They lay on the bank long enough to remember lungs. The boys saw the bundle safe and let their shoulders drop. The girl sat upright and adjusted the twine that bound it, quick thumbs, practiced. Rain needled, wind twisted, the wash roared and then argued itself quieter. Etta stood and offered the use of her yard with a tilt of head, not a sentence. The girl answered by lifting the bundle and facing the same direction Etta faced. Decision made. They walked the back way, along the fence lines that droop but still know where to stop. Etta's rented dress pulled heavy at the knees. Mud painted her calves. The children moved without sound beyond the little drum their feet made when they had to hurry across a shallow. The girl kept the bundle under her shawl. When a gust lifted the cloth, Etta saw beadwork fine and spare, and a feather tied to a short stick asleep under twine. She looked away because looking too long at what matters can wake fear before it needs to wake. Her claim squatted at the edge of the flats, a 2-room house with a stubborn door, a shed that wanted to forget it was a shed, a windmill that listened when fed grease and ignored when scolded. Etta unbarred the latch and stepped aside. The children stayed on the threshold until the girl found the stove with her eyes and judged it worth trusting. Etta set the kettle and stoked with cedar chips until flames spoke low and even. She cut bread thin and split it again, making more out of less the way poor kitchens do. The boys ate with both hands but left a last bite each. The girl placed her portion on the lid of the kettle as if warmth could bless it twice. Etta fetched towels and set them where steam could argue with rain. The girl unwrapped the bundle's top and checked for wet. Not vanity, ritual. A painted strip of hide showed a curved mark like a river that learns to meet itself. The girl rewrapped it before the kettle's breath could change the color and rested her palm on the string until the knot remembered its job. Outside, rain slackened to a pensiveness that made roofs boast. Inside, heat took the edge off cold, and the room began to sound like a room again. Etta washed the cuts the road had made across her own feet and then offered the basin without asking. The boys stared at the soap as if it promised things soap cannot. The girl washed first, making it ordinary, then pressed the bar into the younger boy's hand and turned away so he could pretend it had been his idea. Etta took the shotgun down and set it in the corner muzzle to floor. The girl watched that decision and exhaled through her nose, almost a laugh, not at Etta, at the way some choices look bigger than they are, and some smaller. The windmill groaned once and then remembered to turn. The kettle ticked, impatient for its own reasons. The house began to teach them where to step and where not to. Toward evening, the wash gave back little things: a hat brim, a fence rail, a basket broken to ribs. Floods return what they cannot use. Etta checked the lane. No riders yet. The storm's far edge stacked purple over the butte, and light slid under it with that nickel shine the desert loves. She hung the white dress on a peg, water falling from its hem like sentences she would not finish. She pulled on a plain skirt and a man's shirt that had once belonged to a cousin who liked to leave. The boys slept quick, back to back under a wool blanket that had seen fairer winters. The girl walked the single line where wall meets floor and pressed clean grass into the breath holes. She found the door's low hinge and tapped a sliver of willow under it, so the wind would have to work to find a voice. She set the bundle on the table and turned the tin cup handle to the right, the way a right hand finds it in the dark. She looked at Etta then, neither for permission nor approval, just the acknowledgement two women give when they know what the room would like next. Night brought the particular silence that arrives after rain has run out of stories. Coyotes tested a note and lowered it. Somewhere beyond the cottonwoods, a single hoof knocked a stone, and then another, slow, not furtive. Etta banked the stove and slid the bolt that never liked to slide. She lay on the bed with boots off and a knife nearer than custom and watched the door say nothing. Near midnight, the latch lifted and set itself down without opening. A shadow crossed the window once, twice, the second time slower. Footprints would be gone by morning, but someone out there read the yard anyway. Etta's breath kept time with the windmill. She did not wake the children. The girl was already awake, sitting on the floor with her knees drawn up, eyes on the door in a way that did not invite fear, only clarity. She made a small shape with her fingers, thumb touching two knuckles, that meant kept. Sleep came in pieces. Etta learned to take them like bread, breaking them where they broke clean. She dreamed once of a white veil snagging, and then of water rising, and then of boots that fit. When she woke, the room lay gray, and the kettle clicked alive, and the wind had shifted to carry the sound of a lot of animals that agreed about pace. At first it felt like weather walking. Then the ground added its own measure, the way a barn floor speaks when a herd decides to be a herd again. Hoofbeats, many, not running, not hunting. A pace that had already chosen its answer and refused to be rushed toward it. Etta stood and tied her hair with the same strip she had used the day before, the knot smarter now. She slipped into her cousin's shirt in the skirt that did not mind mud and stepped to the door. The girl stood behind her shoulder with the bundle, not hiding it, simply where it belonged when choices arrive. The boys sat up and went quiet the way boys do when noise would be the wrong language. Etta lifted the latch and let the door find its own balance. Morning waited pale over the cottonwoods. The ridge wore a thin necklace of moving dark. As light slid down, the necklace turned to ponies, then to riders, then to the calm of faces arranged to watch every horizon at once. They did not pour into the yard. They did not shout. They shaped a wide ring that left her house breathing in the middle. 50 horses, maybe more, stepping with the certainty of animals who visit places they mean to remember. The first rider tied a blue bead to her gatepost with a turn rein would not steal. The second laid a sack of meal on the stoop. The third a flask. The girl touched the bundle, then Etta's sleeve, then the bead. Etta understood enough to know the day would not ask for a speech. It would ask for steadiness. She had some left. They faced the prairie, not her door. The bundle on her table would decide the morning. They came down the ridge without hurry, ponies neat, feathers still. Light slid along rawhide and bone, found painted wood, stopped on calm faces that had learned to read horizons before they read men. They did not flood the yard. They shaped a wide ring that left her house breathing in the middle, the way a hand cups a small flame. The first rider tied a blue bead to Etta's gatepost, not made with an extra turn that rain would not steal. The second laid a sack of meal on the stoop. The third set down a cured hide folded tight, edges clean. No spear pointed at the door. No voice tried to lead her breath. Etta stood where a person can be seen and still leave room to pass. One palm open. She kept the shotgun in the corner behind her, muzzle to floor. The boys hovered by the hearth, eyes on her hands. The girl stood at her shoulder, the bundle tucked under shawl, both palms spread over it like a roof. A woman with gray at her temples stepped from the ring and worked the well with a quiet strength that made the rope sing low. She slid a coil of clean grass between hook and iron to save the splice from wearing down, then looked at the roof seam, the lower hinge, the rails that learned to whistle in a crosswind. Only after the work knew its job did her gaze find Etta's face. A small nod landed like weight set where a table needed it. A man with hair the color of winter grass guided his pony to the bead and touched the knot, then the dust, then the rail. He untied the bead, tied it higher, and pressed a smear of coal beneath it with his thumb, a short line that curved and kept going. He said nothing. The post looked as if it had been told something and agreed to remember. Etta set the kettle, cut bread thin, salted meat with a pinch shy of sting. She placed the knife beside the plate with the blade turned away and set the tin cup so its handle faced right, the way a hand finds it without hunting. She gave a slice to the next palm that appeared at her step. Scarred, beaded, young, old. When the girl reached, Etta tilted the plate and let the largest piece slide. The girl broke it clean, half for the gray-templed woman, half for herself, eyes steady, lesson precise. Town arrived on the road like a thought that wasn't sure it wanted to be said. Deputy Hale drove a buggy alone. He stopped at the fence and kept both hands visible on the lines. "Everyone safe?" he asked, not loud. Etta nodded once. "We pulled children from a flood," she said, as if naming it could keep it simple. The wintergrass man touched bead, coal, ground in a short sequence Hale read without translation. The deputy tipped his hat to the girl and to the bundle she guarded, then reversed the buggy and left dust for people who liked to talk for him. Two men who had followed at a distance tried to stare down the ring from the far fence, shirts clean where work leaves marks. They did some quick math and came up short. The ring did not tighten. It merely existed with such certainty that their courage found a smaller job for itself and went home. Work took the middle of the day because work knows when it is invited. Two boys from the ring mended the snag in Etta's halter loop with a bone wedge. Two girls laced willow between the worst rails so January would have to earn a draft. The gray-templed woman walked the line where wall meets floor and pressed clean grass into sigh holes a mouse had named in its head. The wintergrass man rode the perimeter twice and sat where shade and view agreed, his pony breathing the same long measure the ring used. The girl set the bundle on the table just inside the door and loosened the twine enough to check for damp without waking the paint. A curved mark showed on the strip of hide, river meeting itself and not spilling. Etta looked and looked away. She had learned that some things answer only to being left intact. Near noon, 3 riders drifted down from the north the way trouble sniffs a latch. Long guns laid across their bows, smiles too wide for weather. They came closer than sense, then hit the place where air thickened. The wintergrass man lifted 2 fingers a span and left them there. 5 riders turned a fraction. No rifles rose. Nothing shouted. The 3 visitors became men who had reasons to be elsewhere and headed there. No one laughed after them. The ring didn't savor victories that came cheap. A lull settled, created by bellies and heat. Etta poured blue clay tea into the tin cup, the smell of wet stone softening the last hard edges of storm. The boys ate until their shoulders loosened. The girl stood by the table with her palm over the bundle, as if listening for something the room would learn later. The child's mother arrived with the next win, hair dark and new braided, face set for a job. She stepped through the ring as if it had parted for her. She touched the boy's shoulder and then the scar along her own wrist, then the knot at the gate. She placed her palm on the bundle through the shawl, and the paint under it seemed to hold its breath and then exhale. She looked at Etta without a smile and without debt. Something like thanks lived in the way her shoulders dropped half a finger's width. A square of quiet formed in front of the post. 4 elders took the corners, reins tied in the same extra turn knot. They did not call it a council. They made one. The winter grass man set a short staff upright in a heel-made hole, the blue bead string swinging once and choosing stillness. Etta stepped into the space because the right place often looks risky. She laid the cut chain in a straight line on the ground, not a heap. She set the key from the auction beside it, teeth up. The child's mother unwrapped the top of the bundle and showed a breath of paint, curved like water that refuses to forget itself. Then closed it again before air could tell stories about it. Deputy Hale returned at a trot with a clerk trying to be important. The clerk waved a ribbon packet and said a word that liked rooms. Seizure. Hale didn't take it. He looked at the bead, at the coal curve, at the staff, at the chain laid honest on dust. He asked where the judge's true seal was. The clerk pointed to a bright red stamp that had learned to bluff in offices. Hale put his hand on the plank Etta fetched from the shed and said, "Court stands here today." He didn't raise his voice. The ring agreed by existing. The teacher came with a ledger under her arm and a pencil already sharp. The storekeeper's wife brought a jar of salt she pretended not to notice in her own hand. The gray-templed woman laid 3 small proofs on the plank, an iron tag with a number that never belonged to people, a ring cut from a leather collar, a lock of hair bound in twine. She pressed each into the wood until the plank remembered. The clerk lost his place and his posture. The winter grass man spoke 5 words in his own language and 1 in Etta's. Kept, shared, safe, witness, here. Hale nodded. The teacher wrote gate kept, well shared, safe road, and left room for names. She signed. Hale signed. The storekeeper's wife signed, with a hand that had found a better job than counting. The winter grass man pressed his palm beneath the lines and left a print like a river bend. The gray-templed woman drew a small curve under it, anchor mark for maps that are walked more than read. The ring did not ask for money, it brought horses. A boy not much older than the rescued pair led a dun with a back like a shelf and eyes that didn't argue and put the rope into Etta's hand. The winter grass man touched her wrist with 2 fingers, light as moth, then the bead, then the staff. The meaning stood there without grammar. You opened iron, keep open water. While winter stands, our watch ties to your post. This back will carry your day. Etta had no pocket for shock, so she stored it in the way she took the rope. Both hands careful, head bowed once the width of respect. The dun breathed in and out as if it had decided a long time ago that this yard would be where it learned patience. By late light, the ring loosened toward the creek, not leaving, only learning the night's shape. The gray-templed woman stepped inside 1 pace, turned the tin cup handle right, and set a small twig of something sweet on the sill. The child's mother rested her palm on Etta's wrist wrap and tied a thin band of soft hide above it. Not binding, a promise with room. The girl checked the bundle and touched the bead, then drew a quick circle in dust at the threshold with the toe of her moccasin. Not around Etta, around the door. She tapped it once and let the mark belong to the floor. Night found only honest noises left. Owls traded shifts, coyotes tested a song, and chose the verse with fewer teeth. Hale posted himself where the lane met the cottonwoods and did not bring a lantern. He read movement by the way grass changes its mind. The clerk took his ribbon back to town where stamps know bigger words than ground. Before sleep, Etta finished the bench frame the winter grass man had nodded at. 2 nails, then a third for the corner that liked to pretend it could lean forever. The boy sanded a burr from the edge with a scrap of hide. Careful, slow. The girl set the bundle down and stood where door and room met and watched the yard breathe in and out inside the ring. The stove ticked. The bead didn't shine. It glowed the way creek water glows when the moon chooses to be patient. Toward dawn, Frost wrote a thin line on the rail, and the windmill clicked once, twice, then settled into work. The ring shifted with it, saddles creaking, ponies blowing steam, watchers trading east for south without a whistle. Etta poured water, set the cup where a right hand finds it, and breathed in the clean scent of blue clay and cedar. Day would ask for steadiness again. She had some left, and now under the beat in the curve, she had something else to lean on when the porch remembered to send paper. A road called safe, a well called shared, a gate called kept, and a circle that had chosen to let her house breathe. Word spread that warriors ringed a runaway bride's house. But what stunned the town was the herd that followed. Light slid over the cottonwoods, thin and silver, turning raw hoof prints into coins in the damp dust. The ring breathed from night shape into day shape without a shout. Cinches eased. Eyes changed from star reading to horizon reading. Etta set the kettle and placed the tin cup with its handle to the right, the way a steady morning begins. The boys hovered by the hearth, hair combed with water and fingers. The girl stood at Etta's shoulder with the bundle under her shawl, both palms steady on it as if warmth could be taught through cloth. They did not call it a council. They made one. 4 elders stepped to the gate and tied their reins with the extra turn that weather respects. A short staff went into a heel-made hole, a blue bead string swaying once before it chose stillness. The man with winter grass hair set his palm to Etta's post, where last night's coal curve darkened the grain, then to the ground between threshold and cottonwoods, then to the well-roped splice that now sang low instead of groaning. The gray-templed woman walked the seam where wall meets floor and pressed clean grass into mouse holes until the room sounded less alone. Etta stepped forward because the right place often looks like a risk. She laid the cut chain in a straight line on the dust, not a heap. She set the auction key beside it, teeth up, the shape that had undone iron shone to morning. The girl's mother loosened the shawl enough to show a breath of paint on the strip of hide, a curve like a river remembering itself, and wrapped it tight again before air could make stories. Her hand touched the boy's shoulder, then the scar along her own wrist, then the knot at the gate. That finished a sentence no mouth needed to carry. Deputy Hale came alone at first, hat low because light off wet ground picks fights with eyes. He looked at the bead, at the coal curve, at the staff, at the straight chain, at the cup set for a right hand. He took his place just outside the square, as law where law could listen. Town trailed him as town does, the teacher with chalk dust on her cuff, the storekeeper's wife with a ledger she had not planned to bring, 2 men who prefer rooms for courage. They stopped at the fence because even a sag knows where lines live. The winter grass man lifted one palm and lowered it, and quiet deepened. The gray-templed woman laid 3 small proofs on a plank Etta fetched from the shed, a number tag hammered from a collar, a ring cut from the same leather, a lock of hair bound with twine. She pressed each into the wood until the plank would remember. The teacher wrote gate kept, well shared, safe road, in a careful hand and left room for names. Hale nodded, a yes that binds more than noise. A clerk rattled up late with blue ribbon and a fresh bay, voice polished for rooms. He read seizure, harboring, stolen stock, the words thin as string against open air. Hale pointed to the plank and to the bead and to the coal curve, then asked where the judge's seal was that knew the weather out here. The clerk showed a red stamp as if color could replace witness. Hale did not argue. He set the clerk's paper under a flat stone and let the morning press its weight. The circle did not tighten. It simply continued to be, which is harder to fight than zeal. Then the thing that would end up in other men's mouths happened, the part the porch had no shelf for. From the draw, a thin dust lifted without hurry. Ponies stepped 2 and 3 abreast, led by boys with quiet hands and women who read ground like scripture. Not 5, not 10. A string long enough to turn the yard into a moving map. Duns, paints, bays, winter coats with good fat still under ribs. They filed through the wide part of the ring and took the corral as if water knew where to sit after flood. 50 heads, maybe more, and none of them balked, as if the gate had learned its name and told it to them. A boy not much older than Etta's rescued pair led a dun with a shelf-strong back and eyes that did not argue. He put the rope into Etta's palm, not a flourish, a fact. The winter grass man touched her wrist with 2 fingers, light as moth, then the bead knot, then the staff. No grammar needed. You opened iron. Keep water open. Winter stands and our watch ties here. This back carries your day. This herd pays what people ought to pay and cannot. Town faces, even the ones that came ready to cluck, lost their place. Etta had no pocket for shock, so she stored it in the way she held the rope. Both hands careful, head bowed the width of respect. The dun blew out long and settled. The boy's eyes sparked and then remembered stillness. The girl glanced once at the bundle and then at the corral gate, and then at the coal curve, measuring a new shape of safety. The teacher wrote again because some things require lines to live on. Horses pledged for winter watch. She underlined pledged as if ink could learn duty. The storekeeper's wife set her ledger on the plank and made a small column for feed and salt. Not to tally a debt, to name a job. Hale signed beneath the teacher's words. The wintergrass man pressed his palm there until a crescent of dust stayed like a riverbend. The clerk tried one last word, compensation, as if finding a price could turn the morning back into a room. The gray-templed woman turned the tin cup handle right, slid it toward him, and looked at his boots. He drank and discovered water without coin can taste like order. He folded his ribbon and rode home with his mouth properly empty. Work arrived because herds do not keep themselves. Rawhide hobbles were knotted with the extra turn. Rails were checked. The corral gate learned to swing without complaining. The girl's mother stepped inside one pace and set a willow hoop on Etta's table, green and still soft, then placed the bundle on a pad of folded cloth and stretched twine in a neat cross over both. She touched Etta's wrist and made a small circle in the air that meant keep her for a time. The hoop was not a shrine, not a trap. It was a room's way of saying a guest had standing. Etta cleared a corner near the window where dawn comes first and made space. She moved the shotgun from that wall to the one by the stove because some promises look better near heat than near hinges. She scrubbed the table once more. The girl nodded. A small permission returned to sender. Winter sun climbed. The ring loosened into watch posts. The corral filled and then quieted. A pair of boys from the band showed the rescued brothers a knot that holds without cutting its own throat. Small hands learned, failed, learned, and the rope admitted the lesson. The storekeeper's wife came back with sacks she had priced kinder than yesterday and left them without talk. The teacher tuned her pencil on a blade and wrote the names of children who would be told about a safe road. She ran out of paper and started a second column down the edge of the plank. By afternoon, the judge came with sleeves rolled, mud up to his calves, and a face that had slept little and meant to sleep less. He listened more than he said. He touched the bead, the bone curve of last night's coal mark, the hoop on the table, the herd eating in the corral, the kettle scent of blue clay that made the room remember rain. He added his name under the teacher's new line and did not bother to polish the loop in his J. The girl lifted the shawl one last time before dusk and let the paint breathe. A curve like water that meets itself and holds, a set of tiny lines for paths, a bird feather bound to a short stick that had slept dry through flood because small hands had not slipped. She wrapped it again and tied the twine with a knot Etta watched twice, and then knew she could make without looking. Keep her for a time felt like a coat put over the shoulders of someone still in work clothes. It fit anyway. Toward sundown, the wind turned clean. Coyotes tried a verse and picked the one with fewer teeth. The herd blew steam and then stood as if remembering old snow. The ring thinned to 6 who knew night posts, not from orders, but from habit as old as weather. Hale walked the lane once and left his boot prints where the safe road learns its edges by use. The judge drove back with the clerk beside him, the ribbon packet under a boot heel, the plank in the back of the buggy, because some courts belong outdoors. Etta set 3 rounds of dough to rise by the warm side of the stove and wiped her hands on a towel that used to be lace. She turned the cup so its handle faced right and laid the knife with its blade away from the edge. She checked the hoop, the knot, the Dunn's lead, the corral latch. The boys slept shoulder to shoulder with straw in their hair. The girl dozed upright for a breath and woke at the smallest sound because bundles trust people better when people trust doors. Etta banked the fire and sat on the bench she had finished at dawn. The wood held. The herd shifted once, a sound like a long sentence turning a page. The bead did not shine. It glowed the way creek water glows when the moon decides to be patient. Somewhere up on the ridge, 2 watchers traded east for south without speaking. The house made its honest noises and wore a new name it had not practiced yet. The valley would try to find words for what had happened. They would say warriors stood guard and horses filled a runaway bride's yard. It would be true and too small. What had happened was that a gate learned a duty, a road learned a gentler law, and a woman who ran in wet lace had been handed a steadier kind of vow, the sort that holds even when paper wears thin. He came with rope and papers to claim a bride. But by dusk, even the road would not carry him forward. Heat stacked over noon and did not move. Dust lay in the lane like a tired dog. The herd flicked tails and stood easy under the bead's shadow. Etta hauled water, set dough to rise, checked the hoop on the table, and kept the tin cup handle right. The boys sorted nails into a tobacco tin. The girl sat with the bundle under her shawl and watched the gate the way a good hinge watches a door. Hoofbeats sounded wrong, hurried, then held, as if a rider argued with his own fear. Arlen Pike, groom of an hour in a temper that liked rooms, cantered up with 3 ranch hands and a preacher who wore heat like armor. Rope coiled on one saddle horn, a blue ribbon packet on another. They stopped at the coal curve as if chalk could throw weight. Arlen pointed at Etta with 2 fingers, then to his hat brim, making something that wanted to be law. The preacher found his voice first, bright as tin. "Vows," he said, looking at the shawl as if cloth could be evidence. "Return what's not yours, come home." The ring did not close, it breathed. 2 riders eased forward until their ponies' shadows touched the line where grass starts to forgive. The wintergrass man pointed once at the bead, once at the coal curve, once at the lane between cottonwoods and porch. The preacher's mouth kept going and lost its place. Arlen lifted his rope and let it fall behind the horn again, a trick meant to plant itself in other people's nerves. It did not. Deputy Hale arrived at a trot and took the slow posture of men who know which way a fence leans before they touch it. He read the ribbon. No judge's seal, just ink that behaves indoors. Hale laid the packet flat on a plank and set the tin cup on it so the handle faced right. "Court stands here," he said, not loud. The preacher tried sin. The word looked small by noon. Arlen edged his bay toward the safe road and met 5 ponies side on. Riders quiet, eyes on horizons. No rifle, no show. Just a line that existed. He tried the other side. Same. The road did not carry him. It simply failed to be under his horse. Etta kept the door open and her hands visible. She took down the shotgun and set it muzzle to floor, a choice people could see. She put bread on the rail, hot enough to smoke and air. She salted 4 slices, one for each man who had brought noise to a place built on quiet. The preacher stared at it like a test he had not studied for. Arlen did not reach. The ranch hands took theirs with a nod small as coins. The gray-templed woman stepped to the plank and laid 3 proofs as calm as moving stones. A collar ring cut through clean, a number tag, a strand of hair bound in twine. She pressed each until the wood remembered. The teacher wrote, "Gate kept, well shared, safe road." Again, underlined the last twice, left a long line for names. The storekeeper's wife signed with a hand steadier than yesterday. Hale signed. The wintergrass man pressed his palm and left a river bend. Arlen tried talk that used to work. Bride price, property, rights. The herd answered with the sound hay makes in a good jaw. The girl lifted the shawl an inch and set her palm on the bundle. The paint slept. The feather lay still. Arlen's eyes caught it, then skipped away fast, as if meaning is harder to fight than men. He pulled the bay around hard enough to bother its mouth. The ring did not move. He rode for town because men who love rooms need walls to echo them. Afternoon built a different heat. 2 wolfers came along the creek with no badges and too much grease on their hands. They measured the safe road, found it inconvenient, and reached under the rail. 5 riders put their ponies broadside between Reach and children without lifting a hand. Hale stepped from the cottonwoods with rope and an expression that said later and now at the same time. The wolfers discovered a talent for walking and used it toward the red square at the county road. The preacher lingered by the coal curve until his hymn book forgot its tune. He said temptation to the air and got back a kettle's whistle, the soft click of an oven mouth cooling, and the smaller sound of children counting nails. He left the way men leave, who have not been given a fight to win. Work filled the noise he took. Sonny showed the boys the hitch that holds a gate without chewing its own rope. The gray-templed woman greased the windmill tail until it listened. The wintergrass man walked the corral fence and set a wedge under a post that had learned to lean. Etta moved bread from oven stone to rail, then kneaded the next round. She checked the hoop and the knot and the place on the table where the bundle had left a grace dark as rain. Near sundown, Arlen returned with the judge, coat off, boots honest with mud. The judge looked at the bead tied high with a bone ring and a thin copper ring threaded through. He touched the coal curve and the staff hole. He set his name under Safe Road in a hand that did not need flourish to be read. He took Hale's packet, crossed void here over the red stamp, and wrote one line a room could live with. No man crosses the children's lane with rope in his hand. Arlen laughed short and wrong. He said husband. The judge looked at Etta's face, then at the shotgun muzzle to floor, then at the girl's mother's hand on Etta's wrist wrap. Not today, he said, and the way he said it made the ground sound like it had made the same decision. Wind shifted cool. Coyotes tested a note and chose a quieter verse. The herd settled to a hymn that doesn't ask for words. Arlen turned his bay and took the town road without court escort, which is its own kind of sentence. The ranch hands followed because they had work mornings and eyes that prefer to see them. Dusk painted the bead dark, then near. The gray-templed woman stepped one pace inside to turn the tin cup handle right and to lay a small twig of sweet dry plant on the sill. She touched the hoop, then Etta's bread-salted palm, then the Safe Road with 2 fingers, as if to say, keep it this simple. The winter grass man retied the bead higher with that extra turn Rain respects, pressed his thumb to the coal curve until a soft print lived there, then rode to the ridge where watch changes. Night came with honest noises. The boys slept shoulder to shoulder under a blanket that had learned better winters. The girl set the bundle on folded cloth and rested her palm on it until the room steadied. Etta sat on the finished bench and measured the day. A rope that never flew, a road that chose a side, a law written on a plank and kept by people who looked outward first. Before sleep, she walked to the gate and touched bead, bone ring, copper ring, coal curve. She whispered nothing and meant everything. The windmill clicked once, twice, then worked. The herd breathed. Hale's boot prints dried into the lane like small oaths. The house kept its temper. The road kept its name. And the valley, which used to favor noise, learned the weight of a quiet that does not step aside. They came at first frost with no weapons and a name, one she would have to earn before she wore it. Cold thinned the air until breath looked like thread. The herd stood easy, muzzles white with rime. The bead at the gate held its color. The coal curve on the post had blurred and then settled into the grain the way a truth does when it decides to stay. The ring had thinned to a watch of 6. They traded nights without orders. Hale's red square at the county road bleached to pink and then to the color of dust. Nobody needed its shouting now. The judge's line on the plank dried flat. No man crosses the children's lane with rope in his hand. The plank leaned by the door like another kind of rifle. Etta baked 2 rounds at dawn, one for the watch, one to set on the sill because some doors keep better with a small offering than with a heavy lock. The boys carried kindling from the draw, boots new to their feet and already knowing their work. The girl, Sonny, as Etta had finally learned at the trough, checked the hoop on the table, the twine cross over the bundle, the knot that gives on purpose and does not slip by accident. Her hands moved like memory. The mother came first, hair braided tight against the cold. She touched Sonny's shoulder, then Etta's wrist wrap, then the coal curve, a sentence completed. Behind her, the man with winter grass hair rode down with 4 elders and the gray-templed woman. No drums, no flags. They tied reins at the post with the same extra turn that weather respects. The staff went into its heel-made hole and settled as if the ground had kept its place for it. They did not build an altar. They used the road. A square opened between post and threshold. Etta stepped into it because the right place often looks like a risk. She laid the cut chain in a straight line one last time and set the auction key beside it, teeth up, then moved both off the plank and into a sack. She would take them to court when paper woke again. She would not leave iron on her floor for the wind to read. Hale arrived without a hat, hair silver with frost, eyes steady. He kept to the edge of the square. The teacher and the storekeeper's wife stood near him with their coats buttoned wrong. They had dressed in a hurry because news outruns clocks. Arlen Pike did not ride out. Men who live by rooms go quiet when rooms stop echoing. The gray-templed woman laid 3 proofs on the plank and pressed them until the wood remembered. The number tag, the ring cut from a collar, a lock of hair bound with twine. She took a 4th thing from her pouch, a thin circle of hammered copper, and slipped it through the bead knots so blue and bone and metal sat together. She tapped the post with 2 fingers and then the safe road. Kept. Shared. Witness. She did not need the words. Sandy's mother lifted the bundle and set it on folded cloth in the hoop. She loosened the twine just enough to let paint breathe. A curve like water learning to meet itself and hold. A small line for paths. A feather bound to a short stick that had slept dry through flood because little arms had not slipped. She wrapped it again and placed her palm over the cross of the twine. Then she took Etta's wrist and tied a narrow band of soft hide above the wool. Not binding. A promise with room. The wintergrass man turned to Hale and held up his hand. 5 fingers open. He spoke low in his own tongue and then shaped one word the road already knew. Safe. Hale nodded once and made a crease with his boot heel across the lane to mark where a man must lower his voice. The judge stepped forward in shirt sleeves and added a line to the plank with pencil stub and cold fingers. The county recognizes the kept gate in the children's road until spring hearing, and after that if winter says so. He signed small so others could fit their names. Then the thing happened that would be told wrong in saloons and right by children. The winter grass man faced Etta and touched bead, coal curve, hoop, oven mouth, well rope, Dunn's neck in that order. He spoke a name for her, not the one the ledger kept. He said it once in his own language, and then again in a shape English could carry without breaking. Keeper of the road. He did not ask if she liked it. Names that fit do not ask permission. Etta did the only thing that made sense. She set her palm on the post below the curve and held it there until warmth passed from skin into wood. She lifted the tin cup and set it with the handle right and looked at the line between cottonwoods and porch. It looked back. Sani stood at her shoulder with her palm on the bundle and did not smile. Her eyes softened, which is better. Noise tried to arrive and failed. 2 men on sorrels came from town with questions that wanted to be orders. They stopped at the crease in the lane, saw the names on the plank, saw the herd that had not left, and saw 6 watchers who liked horizons. One touched his hat without meaning to. The other found a new job for his hands and held his reins with both. After, work took the cold hours. The ring and the neighbors lifted posts where the snow would drift worst. The gray-templed woman greased the windmill tail until it stopped arguing. Hale fetched a faulty hinge from his saddlebag and traded it for one that would hold. A judge should not know hinges, but hands learn what rooms forget. The teacher counted children on her slate and lost track on purpose because numbers behave better when they share space with names. Etta made soup from bone and onion and the end of a sack of meal, and the smell found even the horses' noses. She washed the lace dress, wrung it, hung it on a peg. Cloth dripped like old sentences, learning shorter shapes. She folded the veil and set it in a cedar box with the chain sack because paper would need to see both. She took Arlen's ring from her pocket and laid it on the plank for the judge to look at and then to set aside. He did with a care that said he had seen rings do damage and wanted this one to find a smaller job. Afternoon broke and refroze. Breath looked like prayer. The herd blew steam and settled. The staff left its hole, and the hole stayed, a small mouth the road could speak through again when spring asked it to. The wintergrass man tied the bead higher one last time and left his thumbprint soft on the curve. He touched Sani's head and the Dunn's neck and Etta's wristband, and then turned his pony toward the ridge. The watch thinned to 2. Sani stayed until stars wrote 3 bright commas over the butte. She mended the boy's sleeves and stitched a tiny blue bead into the inside seam where only skin would know. She checked the hoop and the knot in the oven stone. She pressed Etta's wrist wrap once more and tied the simplest knot. A tired person could loosen it with one hand and no teeth. She said thanks, because some words belong to every language, and climbed up behind her mother. They left in pairs and threes, not a parade, just weight moving off a floor that had learned it could carry it. The bead did not shine. It glowed the way creek water glows when the moon decides to be patient. The coal curve kept its bend. The safe road held its line without a fence to help it. Snow came on us that night. Boards popped. The windmill clicked once and settled into work. Etta woke early, baked a single round, and tore it with both hands. She set a piece on the sill for whoever needed feeding without asking. She gave halves to the boys because growth is hunger that found a task. She gave Sani's mother the last slice in her mind and kept the making of it instead. At first light, Hale brought a paper with the court stamp for rooms and a copy for planks. He read one sentence and left the copy under the bead in a tin sleeve the storekeeper's wife had hammered from a scrap of roof. Kept gate, shared well, safe road. 3 lines, no sermon. He tipped his hat and rode to the far ranches, because the county does not manage itself. Etta walked the lane with the boys and showed them how frost keeps even a poor track honest. She showed them where a person can stand and hear more than the wind when hooves speak beyond the cottonwoods. She showed them how to set a cup so the handle faces right, because houses keep temper when small things face the right way. She did not teach them to bow. The road had done that. By noon the herd chewed steady. The dun learned her hand and the boy's whistle and the weight of a good blanket. The oven mouth breathed sweet. The hoop sat quiet on the table, the bundle asleep under twine and care. The lace dress dried and kept its new silence. The ring on the plank stopped pretending to mean anything at all. The valley would tell it different in coffee rooms and along fence lines. They would say a runaway bride led 3 Apache children out of a flood and woke to 50 horses in her yard. They would say warriors guarded her gate and the judge wrote his name under a new rule. They would leave out the cup handle turned right, the coil of grass saving a rope, the way a blue bead made wood remember where kindness had stood. They would be wrong, and not by much. Near dusk, Etta stood at the post and set her palm flat under bead and bone, and copper and coal. Breath traced the cold. She did not ask for anything. She did not promise anything louder than work. The road answered in the only language it uses, a path kept by use, a line walked by children with slates and by riders with watch in their hands. She went inside and cut the bread and set the knife with its blade away from the edge. The boys laughed once at a joke only hunger knows. Sani's shawl, left folded for a visit, kept its shape. The house made its honest noises. The herd shifted like a long sentence turning a page. The moon lifted slow. The name waited on the post and did not slide. If this story moved you, tap subscribe, hit like, and leave a comment. What moment held you? What twist you'd write next? Or which detail, the bead, the coal curve, the safe road, stuck in your mind?